This episode brought to you by Nomadic Research, built for the wild and forged in adversity. Somewhere between the front lines and the firelight, a vision was born. The founders of Nomadic Research spent years in the harshest environments on Earth, where grit and resilience weren't just words, but a way of life. They saw a need for gear that could handle anything, gear that wasn't just built, but built to last. From battlefields to backcountry trails, every piece of Nomadic Research gear is designed with one mission: unyielding performance for those who refuse to quit. The founders believe in patriotism, personal responsibility, and the freedom of the great outdoors, because adventure isn't just a weekend escape, it's a way of life. Born in the heart of Afghanistan, forged in adversity, and built for the wild, Nomadic Research is gear for those who go further. You can start your adventure at nomadicresearch.com. What's up, man? I'm so glad you're here. This has been a while coming, and your brother hooked us up. The first question I got to ask you, he has a cool nickname. Did you ever have a cool nickname?
I had a cool nickname. Well, I guess if you'd call it cool, they did call me Dutch.
Oh, yeah, I like that. That's way better. That's Predator, right?
Yeah, it was all right. There was a couple Noose, Dutch. They kind of called me a little bit of both.
Oh, that's awesome. So, like we said, your Brotherhood hooked us up, and I'm so glad you're here, man. You got a great story to tell, and I'm happy that you're telling it with me. Let's start like we always do, man. Let's go back to where it all began and kind of how you got this. Your family is like it's like a tradition in your family to serve. Everybody, it seems like, serves. So, what was it like growing up with that much influence around you? I mean, your dad was in Vietnam, Hoot was doing stuff, your sister, everybody was involved. So what was that like growing up?
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, again, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
There was family members that served in our family clear back from World War One. That's kind of my first memories. My dad had my great grandpa's steel pot from World War One down in the basement. I remember kind of messing around with that. But yeah, there's several aunts, uncles, grandmas, grandpas, you name it, that have all served. So we were always kind of surrounded by it. It was uh very prevalent in our upbringing. So yeah, aunts, uncles, like I said, twin sister, even my buddy's Dagan's wife's brother, cousin, we're all kind of surrounded by it.
Was there a lot of, I mean, I guess there was a lot of patriotism. Like, did growing up in the United States mean something to your family? And what I mean by that, of course it did, because you all joined the military. But did it seem really relevant when you were growing up of how much pride that your whole family had in the country?
Absolutely. I can recall going to Memorial Day parades every year. My dad was a member of the American Legion and the VFW, as well as my uncles that served, and that was always a big deal. I helped put out the flags as a wee young lad at the cemetery, and as far back as I can remember, there was a lot of patriotism, as you said. Obviously, with having that many people that served, it was very much a part of our upbringing, and a lot of it continuously throughout growing up. So
You know, we talked about your dad and being in Vietnam, and that he didn't talk about it a lot to you or to your brothers. You said it more came out after you had joined, after you had done combat. You heard a little more. Did you get any kind of idea of what your service would look like without him talking about it?
honestly, probably not. Other than the recruiting posters, dad, that's kind of what started it. Dad never talked about much of Vietnam growing up. Um, he never really talked to it much at all until we joined. But again, with having that many family members that served in various branches, we kind of knew what to expect to an extent. But yeah, he never really talked about it until after we had joined.
So when you saw your brother join, because how many years before you did Hoot join?
4 years.
Okay. So you had seen 4 years of it and what he had done. And so he joins in 2000, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So you see him join before 9/11 happens, and then you see the rapid pace that picks up with him. Is that, you think, kind of the final nail that sealed it for you, that this is what you wanted to do after seeing what he was doing for those 4 years?
Um, yeah, I kind of knew that I wanted to do that. I mean, Dagan had talked about it since, well, we had both kind of talked about it. We both grew up playing with GI Joes and, playing war and doing watching the movies. So we both kind of knew at a young age, but I mean, he and I weren't that close growing up. 4 years isn't that long, but I guess, in a child's life it is. He was in high school, I was in junior high. Um, so once he left, I remember him leaving for boot camp. Um, you never really saw him again until he was here on leave. So I never really knew what he was doing and whatnot, and I was naive to the fact, of what he was doing and going through. I was still in my high school years, so um, we both kind of knew at an early age. So I didn't really have that big of an idea until I did it myself. I just knew he left and I knew he was coming back after 3 months for 10 days. And then I knew he was going to be gone again.
Well, talking about, relationships, you and I had talked about your twin sister and what a difference it is growing up with a twin sister, not a twin brother. And you had even pointed out that you're best friends until junior high, and then it kind of separates, into the
Yeah.
minutia of being in junior high and high school. But I think that was kind of there with her too, that she saw what you were doing, because I don't really remember you ever saying that she was talking about military service.
Yeah, well, yeah, going back to what your first statement there is, yeah, your best friends all through grade school until you get to junior high, and then it's kind of like, hey, who are you having to the birthday party? If you invite this person, I'll have this person, and it becomes kind of more of a competition. And then after you get into high school, it starts going back to kind of being friends again. And then of course now we're as close as ever. But yeah, she was actually going to join the army first, which we all of our relatives, the uncles on Van Houston side, were in the Marines except for one, our uncle Hippie, and he always says, well, he was a smarter one, he went to the army. So Daniela is actually going to join the army first, and they kind of jacked her around a little bit, and so she ended up going to the Marine Corps, but she joined a year after me, so she was doing the college thing and working and whatnot, and decided to go a little bit later. So
you know, with everybody being like that, and we'll get in a little later about, you being in combat and actually coming across your sister as you were coming into a place, she was already there, and you're meeting halfway across the world, after not seeing each other for 2 years. When you join, can we talk about walking kind of through, once you put on that Eagle, Globe, and Anchor, how it changes you when you very first start your career?
yeah, that was, I think everybody remembers when they get handed their EGA, a very defining moment in a Marine's life, of course. And you walk taller, you're the toughest, hardest nails, baddest thing that's ever walked, and it it really prepares you to accomplish whatever you want, even outside the Marine Corps. And I joined the reserves, so I mean, I got to use a lot of the skills and the discipline that you get from boot camp, in a civilian life, right out of basic and us and School of Infantry. So, um, yeah, you just get all types of skill sets through it.
So, other than, pinning on your Eagle, Globe, and Anchor, do you think there's any moments that kind of defined your identity as a Marine throughout your whole time that you were in?
Um, I think, man, going through basic and being challenged like that, I always considered myself someone who kind of thrived off of adversity, a little bit, having people suffering around you and suffering with you. I always kind of got motivation out of that to go harder and be harder, So um, eh, it really, even through my career in the reserves, boot camp was pretty much where I found myself, um, and I guess figured out exactly who I was mentally. Because physically I was in shape, man. I did sports all through high school, so I wasn't really about that. But it was the mental aspect and finding out just exactly how far I could push myself and beyond my limits, that really defined. I mean, even Dagan used to tell me, you can be um, the worst. What do I want to say? Worst Marine in garrison, whatever. But if you can PT, if you're hard as nails, and if you can PT, man, you get respect. So that kind of stuck with me to always try and be the fastest, the strongest, and stand out that way, and people respect you, and that's exactly how it went.
Do you think that's a weird thing though, that you can be the worst Marine in garrison, but as long as you can physically hold your own, you get that respect? Does that, when you look back on it now, because we're a little older, we're more mature, but when you look back on that, does that strike you as odd anymore?
Not really. I mean, I think that carries on in life as well. I mean, if you know, you notice when a guy walks in the room who's physically fit and put
Of
together and
course.
looks like he knows what he's doing, as opposed to somebody who's not. So, um, to be honest, not really. You look to those people like, hey, that dude looks like he knows what he's talking about. He can, knock out some pull-ups and whatnot. And
Right.
so yeah, no, I guess it's not very strange.
So, when I look back on it kind of now on my career, because it's almost 20 years of being a cop now. And it does kind of strike me a little odd now, because you will see people that maybe look like they can handle themselves, but when everything falls apart, they don't know what to do. And I've noticed that a little more as I've gotten older. You kind of start looking at different traits of people. And in the Marines, though, you really strove to be like, you and I had talked about, you were excited to go to combat. You were excited to work with Marines in the field and do that. And not only the first time you went, but you were super excited to go back the second time that you guys went. So when you look back on that, what was it that was so alluring to you about serving that time in combat with those fellow Marines?
Well, circling back to growing up, watching the action movies, the war movies, I was heavily into paintball and stuff in high school in our free time, and just always knowing that I was going to join and wanted to serve. I knew I wanted to go to the infantry. I thought that held the most doors open for me, and I wanted to run and gun. And then once you start training and you start going through the evolutions and whatnot, it's like, I want to go do this for real. And in my case, I joined during a time of conflict. So I was chomping at the bit. I already knew. Like, you're going in and you're joining the infantry, you're gonna go. So I knew I wanted to go, and I was just really motivated to use the training and serve with the guys to the left and right, because as even in an LE standpoint, you develop relationships that are just like brothers. So when you suffer together, that's a whole new tier of relationship. So I just wanted to go do what I was trained to do. And being called up by your country, I think that's the greatest honor if you join the military, in my opinion, to go do your job and do what you signed up to do.
Yeah. So let's talk about that first deployment when you go out. I always ask the guys, as you approach and you come into country, sights, sounds, smells, emotions. What are you feeling as you come into the country to do combat for your country?
Yeah, well, when we flew into Kuwait, I just remember stepping off the plane. It was a civilian contracted plane, and I remember the heat and the hot wind and just blowing on your face like it was a hair dryer, and looking out and just seeing nothing but desert. And of course, you got to say, the first time I saw a camel, I was like, wow, there's an actual camel, and so, but to go back when you get into theater, when we landed in Baghdad and started getting on the 7 tons and whatnot, the it was dusk. It was later in the evening, and you could hear gunfire in the distance. You could see smoke from fires burning. The smell is garbage, and it's exacerbated by the heat. It's there's gunfire. There's everything's littered with pockmarks and bullet holes and whatnot, and you kind of get the sense of now we're here. This is real. You know, anything could happen. So be on your toes. You're not in the black, but you're at 10, you know, you're like very vigilant. So, but you're also excited because you're there, you know, you're ready to get in it.
Do you remember thoughts that were going through your head?
I just remember when we loaded the 7 tons and started traveling outside of the airport. And I remember, when's it coming? When's it coming? You know, weapons outboard, you're facing outboard, everybody's sitting back to back. When's it going? You know, you get a itchy trigger finger, so to speak. Um, that's what I just kept remembering is, am I going to get shot at first, or are we going to get blown up first? Which is it going to be? Because we were taught or told rather that, you know, IEDs were very prevalent. So it was just kind of a guessing game.
So what does that do to your nerves if you're constantly thinking, am I going to get shot? Am I going to get blown up? How do you handle those nerves?
Well, you're trained to do so. You know, everybody's scared. If they tell you they're not, they're lying. Everybody's scared, but you're trained to use that fear as good energy and to help you focus at your job and what you're doing. So it wasn't you know, till you first started getting shot at that you saw people kind of going into the black, but you just I don't really know how to explain it because you're there for a reason and you just know how you were trained, you know.
Do you remember the first patrol you went out on?
Yeah, well, I remember the first patrol that we went out on in USMC, where we had a car bomb go off on Fox Company that was building a fob just inside the town, and that was the first foot patrol I really remember. We had got off the 7 tons, we had staged, and our job was to provide security outside of their where they're building their fob, where they're going to be stationed in this small town. It was bombed out. It was all blown up, just like in movies. Shit everywhere, burned up cars, you know. And we started patrolling the streets. And again, there's garbage everywhere. It's hot. You see people leaving in droves with luggage and whatnot, and that was a key indicator. Like, shit's about to get real. You know, people are getting out of here. And I remember we were in a tactical column going down this tight roadway through the town, and the car bomb went off where they were building their fob, which was not too far away, maybe a couple 100 yards tops through town. But I remember seeing all the dust and the glass blow out of the windows all the way down the road. And then it was like instant, you know, your training kicks in. We ran back, set up an LZ and started taking small arms fire and whatnot. And I remember that just being the first patrol to contact that we ever had.
Well, and that, you know, you're talking about you're going on your first patrol, but also your first gunfight is all kind of combined into one. Do you have, you know, when all of that happens as fast as it did for you, you see the car bomb go off and then it's immediate chaos after that. Do you remember kind of what you were doing, you know, in your role as an infantryman? Do you remember, you know, kind of where you were moving to and all of the chaos that's going on? Do you remember all that?
Excuse me. Yeah, because one of our missions, if they were to take casualties, was to set up an LZ on the outside of town so the helos could come in and get them out. So as soon as that car bomb went off, we started hightailing it back towards where we had the LZ set up. And of course, the squad leader was talking to higher. And I remember running back and we set up security, and then there was a car that came around the corner with a couple dudes hanging out of the windows with AKs and whatnot. And our saw gunners were lighting them up. And just down the road, they were attacking Fox Company as well. So then the mortars start falling, and you don't have time to think about it when it's happening. You just know what your job is. You're listening to your commands, and you're doing what you were trained to do, you know. Yeah, it nothing hits until it's over.
So how do you think you handled it? If you could rate yourself looking back on it, how do you think you handled that first encounter?
I thought I handled it well. Again, I think I've always been somebody who's kind of, again, thrived in adversity. You know, I thought I handled it. I thought everybody did. I thought all our guys did a really good job. I never saw anybody, you know, quote unquote, freak out during that engagement. So we had a fantastic group of guys. I mean, You couldn't ask for anything better. Everybody did what they were supposed to do. We set up the LZ. They got guys that evacuated and whatnot, even amongst all the chaos, and everybody did exactly what they were supposed to do and accomplish that mission.
Do you think that sealed the deal for you? That first contact you saw? Because we have talked about you loving to be in combat and loving to go over there. Did that seal it for you? That first encounter?
Yeah, when it was all done, and it wasn't even that long. I mean, I think it feels longer than it actually is when the engagement's going on. But when that was done and your adrenaline dump starts coming down, I mean, I was like, holy shit. Like that just happened. Like that was real, you know. And at that point, you know, once you get that done, that first one out of the way, it's as weird as it may sound, it's just another day. You know, getting engaged again is just another day. You're kind of used to it.
Well, you know, and that again, people looking from the outside would go, "Man, that's a strange thing to say, that this chaos is just another Tuesday, just another Wednesday." But in law enforcement, in the military, a lot of guys say that it just becomes the same. The problem with that is, at some points, is when it just becomes another Tuesday, some people get complacent, and that's where you start to see things fall apart.
Yeah, absolutely. Complacency kills, right? I mean, you saw it everywhere. You heard it all the time when you were over there, even before you went over. That was a big part of the training. Because it's not like you're in a gunfight every day.
Of course.
I mean, there's more downtime than there is, you know, time in action. So balancing the two is super hard. If you're, you know, you get engaged one day, it might be a week before you get engaged again in some form way, whether it be mortars or a IED or whatever. But yeah, so it does become just another Tuesday, but then at the same time, with all the downtime, you know, like, hey, when's it going to happen again? You know, like that was kind of fun, you know?
Well,
So,
you know, I had a guy on the show that told me that was a big thing to him, was that first engagement and stuff, because that's when he earned his combat patch. And he said
mhm,
that's a club that you can't buy your way into, you can't talk your way into, you just have to do it. And I think that holds like a bit of pride, especially for you, that you've earned your way into that group, because now you've joined your dad, your brother, and you've actually seen combat, and it sets relationships differently, because you even told me that your relationships changed with your dad and with your brother after you had
mhm.
been in combat too.
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, I think a lot of servicemen probably look at another guy's stack, you know, and see if he's got a combat action ribbon, especially if he was in any type of infantry. You know, so yeah, absolutely. When you're saying that's a whole different club. And to your point, you know, dad was a Marine. My brother, who I looked up to all my life, is a Marine. Still do look up to. And then I'm a Marine, you know, but now dad was in combat. My brother's in combat. Now I've been in combat, you know, yeah, to share that, you know, it puts your relationship on another level.
Do you think your identity changed that day a little bit?
Oh yeah, yeah, I think everybody does. I mean, that's a rush you'll never duplicate, you know. So I think it definitely on a molecular level changes you in your mind to where you'll never get that again, you know, with unless maybe through adventure sports and whatnot.
Well, but you know, I think that point should be brought up when you and I have talked in the past, and you talk about, you know, having a job that's boring on the outside. I think that when you get that adrenaline dump and you get that rush of excitement, that it kind of ruins you for the rest of your life.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think it absolutely does. You're constantly searching for that, some way to replicate that, through whatever means. But yeah, especially in the civilian world, like, I mean, from your law enforcement standpoint, you're kind of getting that sometimes. But I have struggled to find anything that is as satisfying, I guess you would say, as having that type of rush.
Right. Well, you know, you had told me that your first deployment was way more kinetic than your second one. There was
Mhm.
way more going on. So as you move through, you were there for a year, right? You were over there from '04 to '05, right?
Yeah, it was a year-long activation. We were in country for just almost 6 months. I think it was somewhere between 5 and 6 months. We were in country. It was supposed to be a 7-month deployment, but we got relieved early. So, but yeah, in theater for just over 5 months, almost 6 months.
So what do you think is changing about you if you're looking back on it now as you go through that 6 months over there? How do you think you're changing as a person from the moment you touch down until you're taken back off and leaving the country?
I think the best way to describe it is desensitized. You know, that's that's one thing I can remember having go through my head is I don't feel anything. I am completely numb to everything. And even when we got back and did our demob, you do your 2 weeks cool down, they call it, and then some of us chose to finish out our orders at our base in Madison, Wisconsin, and it's a college town. People are walking around doing school, partying, doing all those things, and I just remember feeling nothing. And that was hard for me to transition back to civilian life.
Well, you've even talked about when you got back from that first deployment that you thought, I'm going to do whatever I want. I just did this for my country and I'm going to be whoever I am. So when you come back, and that's such a different environment that you've been in. I mean, for the last 6 months, you've been in a country that's not your own, fighting a war, watching people around you die and friends die. And then you go and you're thrust into a college town and everybody's just kind of living this life where they don't understand what's going on in the world. So what are you thinking as you're doing that? I understand that you're numb to it, but I almost think in talking to you before that that could make you angry at some point.
Yeah, I specifically remember one day I was walking through Walmart with my mom, excuse me, and everybody was pushing their car, and I just thought to myself, look at all these people with blinders on. Not a one of them has any idea what's going on around them at any point, whether their face is buried in the phone or they're staring the front of their cart. They have no idea. And when you're in country, it's a 360-degree threat. Like, you're watching hands, because there was no uniformed enemy. It was all mixed in with the population. So I mean, everybody could potentially be a bad guy. And one thing that stuck with me was one of General Mattis's 5 rules was have a plan to kill everyone you meet. Just don't treat them that way. And I that struck me like, yep, that's how I'm going to stay alive. That's how I'm going to stay alive over here. And so I remember walking through Walmart and just watching everybody, and I thought, I have a plan, and none of these people would have any idea what was going on. It just baffled me. But that's the different mindset from when you're in that type of situation to coming home. People don't need to be like that, to an extent here. So that was a struggle, but I knew something had changed, and I wasn't sure how I was going to unchange it.
Do you think that maybe, I don't know if this is the right word to use, but look down on those people at that time, thinking you haven't sacrificed what I have?
Oh, yeah, at that time, yeah, absolutely. When you said, you and I had talked about, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. I mean, I didn't do anything except drink and party. I was living with my mom and dad because, again, I was in the reserves. So I mean, I did my year-long activation, and now I'm back home. Not like active duty, where now we're back at base and we're back training again. You go back to school or your job or your family. So I partied. That's what I did. I mean, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to get drunk. I'm going to do whatever I want to do because I just dodged bullets for the last 6 months. You can't tell me what to do.
So how did everyone in your life react to that?
Not good. Can you imagine? I mean, I had a little bit of entitlement. I think a lot of people do. But I thought coming home and doing real life stuff sucked. I'm like, I got bills to pay. I got girlfriends I got to worry about, whatever. I got a job I'm supposed to show up to. I didn't at that time, but because again, I was like, I'm not getting a job. I'll do whatever I want. I got 10 grand from a year of activation. I've got all the money in the world. People don't know how to take that haven't been there. So it wasn't well accepted, but I think at the same time I was kind of left to my own devices, as in just leave them alone. It'll pass. Whatever. Again, living with my mom and dad. Dad's been there, done that. I don't know what he's telling my mom. He's probably saying, "Hey, just let him do his thing. He'll snap out of it." So dad probably really helped mom keep her sanity when she was dealing with my shenanigans.
Well, and that was going to be my next question was you're surrounded by people that have done the same thing as you. So that entitlement usually doesn't fly with them because they're like, listen, you shit, I've done that too. And so that's where I would think it would take a little turn. But you say that your dad probably helped you out more. How do you think it was with Hoot and stuff? Because he's doing the same thing too. Do you think you low keyed it a little more around them?
I just tried to stay away. Dagan was gone,
Right.
so I mean, he was doing his thing. I didn't get to talk to him much. My sister was deployed, I think again at this time, but again, she's active duty. She spent most of her active duty time in Japan, between deployments, if not all of it. So I mean, I didn't get to talk to them much about it. And my dad was never a big talker about anything. So I mean, him and we talked a little bit, but never too much about how to transition back to civilian life. And it wasn't long after we got back, but I joined the ironworkers. So I started having a regular job, and I think that kind of pulled me out. Once I ran out of money, I didn't have a choice. I have to get a job. I can't do, I had already drank it all. So, you know, um, so that kind of kept me busy too. But yeah, it was not well received. Nobody really talked to me too much about it. It was kind of like, stay away from that guy. He just got back. Let him do his thing.
So you said your dad would say like he'll snap out of it or whatever. But in all the talks that you and I have had, do you really think that you ever fully snapped out of it?
No, I mean, it's always in the back of your mind. And like we said before, once you go there, you never come back fully. You never It never leaves your mind. You think about it all the time. I mean, there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about the war or the deployment. It's just something you live with. It's something you have to learn to deal with.
So what do you think were from that first deployment? What do you think some of the hardest lessons you learned?
Um, just that life goes on. That's not everything that you are or ever will be. Um, like I said, coming back and just drinking my time away and whatnot. As I got older, and again, we're jumping ahead a little bit for that, but yeah, you did it and it's done. And now it's time to move on. You're still a human being and a grown man. There are things you need to do. You can't just sit back and drown yourself and hope it all goes away. This is real life.
So do you think you regret how you, I guess the word would be behaved when you came back from that first deployment?
Yeah, looking back, I think I acted like a child. I mean, if I could say that, I mean, it was entitlement. I thought nothing about anybody except myself. And like I said, I was completely numb to anything except for about how I was feeling and how I was going to make myself feel, regardless of how it was going to make anybody else feel around me. I didn't give a shit. Oh, it pisses you off that I do this. I don't care.
Right.
And that's a shitty attitude. So yeah, looking back, I completely regret, acting like that. it wasn't for a long period of time, because we got called back, but I completely wasted that time. I'd went to the community college here in town a couple times. I'd failed out. It was all I wanted to do was party. So I'd failed out. I failed at a lot of things. And I think that time could have been better spent if I would have pulled my head out of my ass, you know?
Well, as you kind of move through, because we talked about it, that you kind of just stumbled around until that next deployment that you did. You were kind of trying to find out, I guess, who you were. I think you had an idea, but you weren't really sure about what that was because, like we talked about, that those first moments in another country kind of defined you as a person, and that definition doesn't hold up back here when you get at home. So as you're moving through, how are relationships, and I'm not talking about with your family, but how are relationships with like girlfriends and other people that you're hanging out with? Because once again, we're going to say that it's completely different from those last 6 months that you just spent with those guys day in, day out, 24 hours a day.
Yeah, it's not the same. You go from, because I joined the Marine Corps 10 days after I graduated high school, went to SOI, the School of Infantry. My first drill, we got told we were leaving. So, I mean, I wasn't around very long. It was like graduate high school, and then the very next year, like almost to the day, you're in country.
Right.
So all my buddies and stuff that I knew of, other than my best friend that I grew up with, he joined at the same time I did. Everybody else is partying, having a good time, going to school, doing their thing. You've probably seen the T-shirt "Spring Break 2004." While you were chilling, we were killing. You know, but when you get back, everybody looks at you like you got a third arm growing out of your ass. Nobody knows how to interact with you. So, you try to keep those relationships with your buddies that you went to school with and whatnot, but 99% of them don't, they don't last, cause nobody knows how to interact with you. They think you've gone over and killed more people than cancer. And now you're a robot, so, yeah, and as far as relationship with girlfriends was concerned, you can't keep one because it's always about the next girl.
Right.
So, yeah, nothing. Those relationships didn't. Most of them didn't last.
Let me ask you a question though about that. You just said that people don't know how to act around you. But now that you look back on it, do you think maybe you didn't know how to act around them?
Yeah, fair point. Yeah, I didn't. I had no idea how to conduct myself. As a normal human being after
Right.
after we got back. Yeah, no, you're exactly right.
So it's I think two, no, yeah, 2 years before you go back, right? I think there's a 2 year gap before you go back.
Yeah, yeah, 2004, 2005, and then '07 to '08. Yep. So,
Okay. So in that 2 year time period, we've talked about where you're wanting to go back. How does your life change when you hear that you're gonna go back?
I'll never forget it. I was walking on the deck at my parents' house, and it was pouring down rain, and I got the phone call, our frost call as they call it, that says, "Hey, we're going back, get your stuff ready to go." I was so excited, like I could not wait. I'd been praying for this call to get out of continental United States and get back to doing Marine Corps stuff. I could not wait because I just didn't know how to conduct myself in a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. So very excited is to answer your question.
So I got to ask you, and I've never asked this when we've talked before, but if you loved it so much and you wanted to go back, why did you never go active?
I ask myself that all the time. And fear, that's all. I mean, I'd come home, get comfortable. I liked boozing. I liked partying. I scared. That's all there was to it. It was like, I don't know what might happen, if I go active duty. I'll just stay here. This is more comfortable for me, rather than going active duty. I kick myself all the time for not going active duty. I think I could have done more, you know, and had more self fulfillment, you know, if I would have gone active duty.
So I want to go a little deeper into the fear because I don't know that I've ever heard anyone say it in that way. What did you think was going to change? I mean, you know guys that have been in and you can drink and you can party. It's not I mean, like you said, there's more downtime than uptime. So I'm just trying to figure out the fear thing because I've never heard someone say it in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I had a steady girlfriend at the time. Um, I was trying to go to school. Like even though I was pissing it all away, at the time, like I had these higher aspirations, but it it was just me being comfortable. I don't maybe not fears. Well, it is. No, that's exactly what it is. I was scared of change. Like come home, doing my thing, you know, yeah, partying and doing all that, but I was scared of changing it in any way, leaving the girlfriend, you know, and moving away, I guess you'd say, but couldn't wait to go back. It was like talk about being torn in two different directions, you know. I didn't know how to handle that.
So you get the call to go back. You do go back. You're back in that life that you wanted again. What's your feelings the second time you touch down?
Uh, Excitement, just ready to go do it all over again at this point. You know, a different group of guys. Most everybody that I went with the second time didn't go the sec or went with the first time, didn't go the second time. I'm a team leader. I was a squad leader. They had given it to another guy because he had more stripes than me. So I had my own group of guys. I ended up getting the squad back. I was excited to lead Marines. You know, my squad leader was awesome. The first time around, my team leader was fantastic. Like I was really close with those guys. So I was ready to lead Marines and do what we did the first time. Now it didn't end up being like that. There wasn't any real action, but it it was just pure excitement again.
So when you come back and you're in this leadership position, how do you think you are as a leader over there?
I mean, not to toot my own horn, but I thought I was pretty good, firm, fair, and consistent. You know, I always took pride in having my dudes be the best, you know, best trained, best in shape, whatever. Um, I thought I grew up as a decent leader due to my upbringing. So I thought I did well. I mean, those guys might tell you different, but I don't think they would.
So where do you think you failed as a leader?
Oh man. I'm not sure. Does that make me an asshole? I don't know how. I'm not
I
sure.
don't I think it makes you self-assured. I don't think it makes you an asshole. But I would think because we've talked and in just the past, 5 years how much you've started to change and grow and look back on things. Maybe that's coming later on where you can go, this is what I failed at. Maybe you're just not there yet
Mhm.
because I mean, there everybody is not great at everything. You know what I mean?
Right,
So
right.
there has to be, and I think that that's just a part of this maturity that you've said that has really started to turn on in the past 5 years,
Mhm.
where you're realizing like I probably could have done this better. I could have done this a different way. When you're over there, it's not as kinetic. You wanted to go back, but it's a different world now. It's a different kind of deployment that you're on. Are you disappointed?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. Because you want the action, you know, you want that type of excitement again and that thrill. I mean, man, we had hot chow, we had a gym, we had internet, we had everything. It was like we used to joke and say it was more like a summer vacation rather than a deployment, you know, compared to the first go around. So a little bit. I mean, I'm not disappointed in the fact that we all got to serve our country and do what we were called up to do. It just wasn't as kinetic there, you know, and that can be good too. I mean, we didn't lose anybody out of our company, on the second go. So, I mean, that's good. But as far as, not getting the action, that's a little disappointing, but we had everything else.
So you talked about, change, that you didn't want things to change. That's why you didn't go active. You wanted to keep the girlfriend around. Did she survive the deployment?
I can't remember. And to be honest, I I don't know. I can't remember. It keeps getting farther away.
So as you're moving through that deployment, what are you thinking for later on in life? Because it's not as kinetic. You know that, it's probably going to change again for you. What are you thinking that you want to do in the future?
Um, Once we got back, I was only a year out from getting out. So I was looking at school. What am I going to do, for a civilian life? Was I going to act on, I had these plans of getting a dual degree program in forestry and whatnot, when I was a young kid, or I had several things I wanted to do. And never really fully committed. So that was kind of going through my head. What, am I going to go back to school? Am I getting this degree? Am I going to go back to the ironworkers? What, that was my job I had before when we got called up the second time. Um, yeah, I'm thinking going back to the ironworkers and then trying to get back in school and get some kind of education and go from there.
So what do you think would be different this time? Because the first time you came back and you did not do well in school and stuff with the failing out and stuff. What did you think would be different about this time?
Well, I didn't think this deployment was as mentally challenging. So I thought maybe I was in a better place mentally. Um, I thought maybe I'm a little older, I just had more motivation. I had more time to think about it in this deployment. I mean, that, like I said, we had nothing going on. You had access to comms back home other than pen and paper, and you know, um, you just had the ability to sit around and think about what you were going to do more than in the first deployment.
How much older are you now than the when you joined? So you joined at 18 right after high
Yeah, and I'm
school.
41 now.
Well, not I'm talking about at this time when you're over there, you are what, 25 about?
Yeah, yep, 24, 25, I think.
And you said that the first time you went over and you came back, you just felt numb to everything. Do you think that that feeling was still around?
A little bit because you're again, the training kicks in, when you're over there, you still have to be numb to an extent. Um, you know, um, so yeah, I think just not as,
Okay, so what about
if
when you
that makes
came?
sense.
No, no, no. What about when you came back then? Did you still have that numb feeling to it's all about me and I'm numb to everyone else's feelings? Did you have that when you came back this time?
Yeah, I think so. Again, I mean, and I don't know why this is. I have such a hard time recalling things from the second deployment and being home shortly thereafter that. And I don't know, maybe because it didn't make such an impact on me as the first one did. But yeah, I had a lot of like I went back to the ironworkers for a little bit, and I remember carrying a lunchbox off a job site, thinking this is what I have amounted to. Dirty, carrying a plastic lunchbox, off a construction site. And I was like, I could fucking do so much more than this. And so, yeah, that was what I was feeling after the second one.
I want to kind of understand that because we've talked about it before. Is you think that you could do more, but there's no really movement in that direction to do more. Can you kind of explain it?
Yeah, I'm I joined the ironworkers because I were told that they were the bad dudes of the trades. Like those were the best guys. So I kind of related to those guys, like they were the Marine Corps of the trades. And I always felt when I was working, like, man, these guys are bad dudes. Like, this is, I could get used to this. I could do it. And then, like I said, I came to that point where I was like, what am I doing? And I didn't have a plan to move forward until I got laid off. And I got laid off twice for almost a year and a half combined. And I ended up applying for the federal air marshals and got accepted in 2008. And that was my plan to move forward and to kind of do something a little bigger, more tactical, law enforcement type. And they went on a hiring freeze in 2008, and I never got my stick date. And in between that time, I had applied for the IDOC, Illinois Department of Corrections, as well, just in case things fell through. And it was a week after I got my acceptance call from the air marshals at the prison, called me and said, "Hey, we'd like to offer you a job as a correctional officer." And I was like, "Nope, already got my call for federal air marshals. I'm going to go do that." And they're like, "Well, why don't you just take this too? And then when you get your date, you can just quit and go on that." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I ended up working as an officer for 9 years, at the prison. So that was my trying to get into the air marshals was that was my plan. I was going to do something more in line with what I thought I was built to do. And it fell through. I ended up going to DOC instead.
We've talked about your depression before. How is it affecting you when these things that you want to do, you want to move on to bigger and better, but they just kind of keep crumbling away? How is that working on your feelings about yourself in general? Because here's where the dichotomy happens in you. When I asked you about being a leader, you said you were good. You didn't, know anything that you did bad. You had a very high standard of yourself when you came back from combat. But I got to imagine that there's a flip to that with how you're starting to feel, because nothing seems to be panning out the way you wanted it to.
Yeah, I thought that I was much better suited for, being deployed than I was for civilian life. And, to your point, when getting laid off again, partying, spending money like I'm in Congress, just doing whatever I wanted to do. And, you said like stuff just wasn't working out, and it chips away at you, um, you think, man, I was so good at doing this. And then I come back here and this is supposed to be normal. Why can't I be good at this too? So that thought crossed my mind all the time. Like I've always considered myself to be a jack of all trades, master of none. But I can't master this at all.
So how do you deal with it then?
Uh, I was just partying. I was just drinking. That's how I dealt with it.
Anybody ever
Like
step in and say, maybe you shouldn't be doing this? Or did they just give you a clear path again?
no, people did. I mean, you get the concerned friends, the concerned parents, you need to slow down, please don't drink so much, but I just had this self-destructive mindset, um, that I couldn't snap out of. Even I just couldn't snap out of it. I thought, I'm just not good at this civilian thing. I'm not good at relationships. I'm not good at paying my bills. I'm not good at showing up for work, but of course the alcohol doesn't help, that once that gets out of control, it's a slippery slope, and I got hired on with the DOC, and it kind of went back to an upslope. I felt like I was starting to become myself and figuring out who I am again, and taking a little pride in what I did.
So when it's going up and down like that, though, we had talked that you were married for a little while. You got a divorce. You're not good at relationships. Are you talking to anyone about this, that you're feeling these feelings? Because we even talked about suicide and all of those kind of things. Are you talking to anyone about this and trying to get some perspective on it?
Yeah, I did the VA counseling thing. I remember the first counseling I went to was a video counseling with a Navy doc, psychiatrist, and he basically read from a script and then gave me homework to do. And I thought, this is bullshit. I can get better counseling through my buddies and whatnot. And I still think that holds true today, especially talking with my brother and my dad. But I all I didn't. Part of me wanted to hear it. Part of me didn't want to hear it, because they're going to tell you, "Hey, dude, you're acting like an ass bag and you need to knock it off and grow up, for lack of a better term. And I was just like, nope, not going to tell me I'm acting like a baby, because I'm not. I'm this big strong man. You know what I mean? But so I was doing the VA counseling thing, and I thought, this isn't working at all. um so yeah, I was talking to some people, I just wasn't listening.
Well, once again, can we go back, and now that you're looking back on it, well, you just said that you think that you can get better talking to your friends, better advice. But I almost think, and if I can contradict you, that he was telling you what you needed to hear. You just didn't want to hear it. And those other people weren't telling you that.
Hmm.
So I got to understand, when you're talking to these guys, and you're hearing what you want to hear, but nothing's changing in your life. How are you making that sound right in your own mind?
It's a constant battle. um I have no idea. um you know, I feel like I have looking back, I can't even think of why I wouldn't have gotten myself out of the hole, myself. I was in a constant negative, woe is me, you know, that was my mind frame. And I, I think once you get in that, and instead of looking at everything as everything's positive, everything sucks, it's hard to snap out of that. And a lot of people, like I said, misery loves company. I was surrounding myself with people who drank all the time, and just had negative outlooks. And I could not, looking back, I have no idea why I couldn't bring myself out of it. But I was just like, nope, this is the way life is. Everything sucks. You drink, you party, and then you die. I mean, that's all I could think of.
That's a truly bleak outlook on life. And you and I
Mhm.
have talked about that before, that that's a truly bleak outlook. But when you're surrounding yourself by people, we know they're not telling you the right thing, but are they almost encouraging that behavior?
Sure, sometimes. I mean, if you've ever had buddies that want to go out and drink 3, 4 nights out of the week, and don't give a shit about anything except drinking and partying, then absolutely they're, to hell with that. You got time on the books, whatever, you can call off, you can do this, you can do that. And yeah, you're right. They talk you into it. So yeah, if you surround yourself with that type of people, that's what you're going to get.
How long do you think it took for you to break away from that?
I mean, probably, what is this? 20 years, 15 years. I mean, if you talk about breaking away, then going back, then breaking away, then going back, it's been a constant roller coaster ride. I think, I've talked to a lot of my buddies that say the same thing. It's, you're up one minute, you're down the next. And that, I think a lot of combat vets have that, where you can get away from it a little bit. You start working on your mental health, your physical health, you change your diet, you change your job, you might change locations where you live. And then you can easily slide back into that. One thing goes wrong, and maybe it breaks you for a little bit, and you got to start over at square one. So, I mean, I've, since the first appointment, it's been 20 years, 21 years, 20 years since we got back. And it's an everyday struggle, but I feel like I'm growing as a person. Every day is a new day, right? You gotta move forward, not backwards.
Well, and the reason I ask that is because, what kind of things what do you think you still hold on to from back then? Because you're,
Camaraderie.
like you said, you're 20 years removed from it. So what are you holding on to?
Uh, I don't. I mean, as far as good things or bad things,
Both.
um, I still think every once in a while there's still that survivor guilt, that pops up. Um, there's some things that happen that you can't really always get out of your mind, because, again, even to this day, I think about it on a daily basis. It's just something. It's made that big of an impact. But good things, I try to remember the camaraderie. You'll never have that type of experience with another group of guys like you did then, and you develop lifelong brotherhoods and relationships with those people, and I try to hang on to that. I've really tried to orientate my mind towards the positive stuff rather than the negative, because I've been so focused on negativity for so long, and I'm just exhausted. Anybody that's fought that battle just knows what I'm talking about. It's super exhausting. So I've just kind of tried to look outside myself instead of thinking about why what do I want to say, having such a selfish outlook. I look past my nose. I stop looking in the past and start looking towards the future and be thankful for what I have, not what has happened to me, but what is going to happen. So that's kind of changed me a little bit in the right direction.
I want to ask though, I said good and bad that you held on to, and you said, I'll never have that camaraderie ever again. It'll never be like that group of guys. So is that a good thing or a bad thing that you're holding on to? Because let me set it up a little bit. It almost sounds like a bad thing to me because you set that standard in your own mind, and you know how you are. You set that standard in your mind that I'll never have it that good again. Therefore, it can't ever be achieved.
Yeah, yeah, I see what you're saying there. But I remember, I guess what I want to say is, I remember I'm always searching for that type of camaraderie and that type of brotherhood and whatnot. I think it is being achieved in different levels. You just, do I want to say, have to look at it through rose-colored glasses? I'm not exactly sure if that's what I mean, but um, yeah, I think it's a good thing because it makes me feel good, makes me happy thinking about that type of stuff. So yeah, I guess you could look at it either way.
I want to go a little deeper into the depression though of it that you talked about, that you fought so hard to get through. You said at one point that you were just exhausted.
hmm
Is there a way that you can describe that for people that are watching this or listening to this, that they could understand maybe that's what they're doing? Maybe they're reaching that point of exhaustion. Can you just talk about like how you felt and what made you kind of open your eyes, and not rose colored glasses, but open your eyes and go, shit, I can't do this anymore?
Um, there's a difference between physically tired and mentally tired. I mean, everybody knows what physically tired is. Being For me, I was so mentally strung out with the negative thoughts and the suicidal ideations. It was just like someone in your ear constantly spewing negativity from the minute my feet hit the floor. But inside my head, I was so I couldn't focus on stuff. It it didn't matter if I had won $1 million. I would have told you, well, this is what's wrong with that. You know, um, you can't get out of bed. I didn't want to open my eyes. I thought I've got a wife and two kids, and I thought they're a problem for me. They're getting in the way of shit. Like everything was negative. And I remember just at times laying on the bed and just thinking like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm so tired of fighting internally that I just don't want to do it anymore. I can't continue living life this way. And I think that was my rock bottom, where I couldn't fathom how I could possibly in my mind continue to feel the way I feel. And it was just complete chaos inside my head all the time.
Well,
I
you've
didn't know
told,
whether to cry or what to do.
and that is a horrible way to live your life. The interesting part of it though is you've told me before that your wife was always positive, always even keeled, tried to bring you out of it. And I'm just wondering what took so long, you know, with her doing that to make you come out of it. I mean, you said from day one she was that way.
Yeah, she always has been. She's amazing. She's always been there for me uh, comforted me and tried to do everything she could in her power to snap me out of these funks, and I would go maybe a week I'm in a good mood and 2 months I'm pissed off all the time about everything. I started thinking about how I would be remembered. Let's say something happened, I got hit by a truck, or I work for DOT now and I'm next to the highway with cars going by all the time, and what would my kids think? Was dad angry all the time? Dad hated everything about life, even if it meant going to our sporting events or whatever, it didn't matter. We couldn't make dad happy. What would my wife think? Was I never good enough? Was that why he was always angry? Was that why he was always upset? It was go to work, come home, eat dinner, go to bed. Like, I started thinking about what people would remember me like. And that kind of started transitioning my mind as out of that, from everything sucks and into everything. You couldn't ask for a better life. Like, you have everything you could ever ask for. Instead of looking at what you don't have, I started looking at what I do have. And that kind of started transitioning me back into a positive line of thinking. Um, and I've had a few guys and several from our unit who have committed suicide, and I can't even fathom what that would do to my family, and friends. I mean, I started thinking less about me and more about other people, to be honest.
Well, you talked about you wanted to know what people would think about you. Let's go back to that old you, because you had a turnkey family. You're the woman that you married already had a son, and
Mhm.
you're kind of a turnkey family. You become a dad instantly, and you had talked about not even ever having kids. You didn't think you were going to have kids, and you're going through this. What do you think that guy back then, what do you think they would have said about you? Say something happened to you back then. How do you think people would have described you?
Great guy, was all about Dane, but good guy. I mean, he could make anybody laugh, but he was an asshole. Yeah, that's what they would have said. I mean, and I think they would have said probably a drunk too. You know, um, I don't know that anybody would have had a whole lot of good to say about me back then.
We've never talked about how were you when you were drinking. We've talked about the depression that sets in behind it and stuff, but how were you as Dane drinking? Were you the life of the party? Were you an asshole? What did that turn you into?
Life of the party, as long as there were people around. If you left me alone, or with my family, like when my wife and I first got together, and if there weren't people around and I had constant stimulation, I was pissed off. Pissed off. I wanted people around. I wanted company. And if everybody left, it was like, the party's gone. And now I have to sit here with myself and my own thoughts. Now I'm mad. And I was a complete jerk.
Which is so weird again, when we talk about it, it's so strange for me to hear when you say you wanted people around. And we've talked about so many times in this conversation that you did everything you could to keep people at bay, but you still wanted them around. You were all about yourself. You are all about this, but you were mad when you had to be with yourself.
Yeah, it was having people around and, being in a party atmosphere was my escape from reality. And when I drink, it's you loosen up, you start, having a good time, you feel good and whatnot. But then with everybody around, my mind's occupied. I'm not thinking about anything, except for having a good time. And then when they're gone, now I'm thinking about, again, my negative mindset on how everything sucks. I got to work tomorrow. Work sucks. Like, now I'm mad. Now I'm mad about now I'm mad about it. I'm still wanting to party and everybody's gone. And everybody's going to know that I'm fucking pissed off about it. And unfortunately, the people closest to you are who's still there when the party leaves, right? So
Right.
they take the brunt of everything.
So how do you think you acted back then towards, being married, being in that turnkey? How do you think that you were as, we'll start at first as a husband?
I think good. Like I said, I met my wife at the prison. That's when we started dating, and our oldest was 6, had just had his 7th birthday when I met him, and that's when I decided that I want to have kids. You and I talked about how I was said, nope, never, nope.
Right.
What a pain in the ass. Why would I ever do that? Um, and when I met them, I instantly had my mind changed. I mean, I fell in love with my wife in the first couple seconds I met her. I remember her class had showed up at the prison, and I was an escort, and one of the dudes from her class was shadowing me, and she came out of a building, and I said, "Hey, man, that's my future wife right there." And he laughed. We laughed it up, and she is, she's now my wife. But she instantly changed my mind. But I was great unless I was drunk. Then I was not. Then I mean, I can't even fathom why she stayed with me, with the hell that I put her through. I mean, I was just not a good person.
When do you think, or I guess, how long do you think was your longest stint? You talked about you could be happy for a week and then you'd be pissed off for 2 months. What do you think the longest period of time you went through
As far as a low,
as a low? Yeah.
probably eh, probably about 6 weeks. I could always feel it coming on, and I still can sometimes. You can feel it where it's almost like an engine that's getting ready to blow up. It is running like a raped ape, and in the back of your mind, you're about to crash, and it's like a light switch. You'll wake up and everything sucks, and then it's just a downhill slope till you hit the bottom, and then as quick as it came, I'd wake up and be like, "Oh, everything's great." But usually I was also waking up having to apologize to people because I drank my face off and acted like an idiot. So probably 6 weeks, and then you'd be good for, maybe 2 tops.
And that's what I was getting ready to ask you. Compared to how long was the happiest stint?
Yeah, I mean, probably about 2 weeks, and then I start getting antsy. The anxiety builds up. You're looking for that thrill, and it's not coming. And so, where do you go? Straight to the bottle.
So, do you think that there is anything out there that's going to give you that rush and kind of keep you even keel ever? Do you think you'll ever find that?
I think I mean, yeah, yeah. I think I have found it now. With my family and my health, and um, we talked on the phone a little bit about it. Like, I can't imagine it being any better than what it is right now. And again, I think my mindset has changed into being thankful and grateful for what I have, and stop searching and start seeing what's right in front of you. I've got 2 healthy, beautiful boys. I've got a beautiful wife at home. I'm fortunate enough to have both my parents. All my family members live super close, and we get together on a regular basis. I've got a good paying job. I've got my health. So I one a wise man, you could probably guess who he was, sent me a meme one day that said, "It's you against you, and one of you has to die." And it hit me like, that's exactly right. And I need to kill the negative me. And so that's what I've been working on.
It's hard to kill that negative person though, because it's always hiding around the corner.
It definitely is. And I still, when people talk to me and start bitching about jobs and, like, I mean, minuscule problems in the big picture, tiny problems. Yeah, your job sucks. Nobody likes to work. But I start thinking, is that what I sounded like? Did I sound like that? Did I come off like that? And I, get the don't rain on my parade mindset. Like, you have to stay positive and surround yourself with positive people. And that's really been working for me.
You think you wasted those first couple of years being married?
Oh, big time. Big time. I When things were going good, I constantly looked for a way to destroy it because it scared me that things were going so good. Like you just wanted to, nope, nope. The only thing that can go from here is bad. And I'm just going to make it happen and get it out of the way. Like, so I would just destroy the relationship and move on to the next one. So yeah, I can't even remember what you just asked me when I got into that story, but
well, I was asking you, do you think you wasted those first couple of years being married?
Yeah.
But I've almost got to ask you, when you say that, you feared something bad was going to happen, so you just hurried up the process and made it happen. Of knowing the family members of yours that I know, I don't know that there's anyone like that. So why do you think that is the outlook that you took?
Man, I don't know. I have no idea. I was just so
I
hell
guess
bent on.
I guess a better question for that would be, where did that come from? When do you think that started? Because I don't think that was there all the time.
No, and again, I think a lot of it stems from deployments and whatnot. If you absolutely positively want something destroyed overnight, you send the Marine Corps, right? Like if you had a problem with it, you just go destroy it. Well, in the civilian world, if you got a problem with something, you can't just go destroy it, you know? So when I would have problems, self-induced, mind you, in a relationship, I would, this is becoming more of a pain than it is a pleasure. And it's because of me, I'm just going to go destroy it. So I would destroy it and then move on to something else. But I don't know why that mindset just kind of stuck with me. I just never, I was stuck in such a negative, like entitled woe is me place that I was just like, well, I'm in charge of this. I'm just going to crush it.
So do you think you did that with your wife that you have now? Do you think you were like that in the beginning of that relationship too?
I was trying. I was trying to. Yep. I most definitely was. And the alcohol was a lot of that, you know. But I was definitely trying to, and thank God, you know, she's more mature and way smarter than I am. And, you know, I think she could see what was going on. And I don't know, call her an angel. She knew how to handle it and knew how to turn me around because she did.
Well, and the whole thing is, throughout your whole story, people have given you grace to be yourself. You talked about your parents when you came back. They said, just let him be. He'll figure this out. Your family members have done that. Your wife has done that. Where do you think you're at if none of that grace was given to you? If people just wrote you off and they were like, you know what? Fuck that guy.
Jail or dead. I mean, I was on the fast track to one of those, you know, one of those. Because eventually you burn all your bridges and nobody's there anymore. And I was starting to experience that. I mean, I had family members write me off. I had friends write me off. I I almost lost my job. Like it, I was on that path, you know. So again, I get sidetracked, but yeah, I just had a lot of people start saying, nope. They were saying, no, whatever, dude, do whatever you want. You want to kill yourself. You want to ruin relationships. You want to lose your job. That's cool, but don't involve me in it.
So what do you think? Because we've talked a lot about, you kind of fighting to come out of that and kill off that person. But if you could say, what was the one match point that you said, I'm at bottom, I can't do this anymore? Do you remember a specific incident happening where you told yourself, this is not sustainable?
Yeah. Like I said, it was I was sitting at the kitchen counter and I was paralyzed in my own mind with, I, d- I don't want to fight anymore inside my head. Just like that time I was laying on the rack, having the same problems with the last time I remember I was sitting at the counter thinking I could just go outside, you know, take my boat out on the water and tie the anchor around my foot, whatever, shoot myself, whatever. and I couldn't move from the counter. And my kids were sitting there and I wasn't saying anything. I was just numb. And I remember just being able to look up and see them. And I thought, what am I doing? You know, look at what you have. And I just thought to myself, this has to change. I can't keep fighting anymore. And again, that quote that was sent to me came into my mind, and I looked around and I thought, I have everything I could ever ask for, and I am not going to take advantage of it. And I just started from that day forward. I mean, I started listening to positive YouTube, like motivation channels, making sure I'm hitting the gym every day, you know, change my diet, and spend more time with my family. And again, more time looking out and seeing what I have and less of what I don't have or what I'm searching for, and just being thankful that I have all of this. Some people can't say that, you know.
I got to ask you, how do you go to your wife after this person that you were, and now you have this new outlook on life? How do you even try to start explaining that to them? Like, hey, look, I know I was this guy, but now I'm this guy. How does that even happen?
Well, I can't tell you the amount of times I had heard, you're not the guy I fell in love with before this point. You know, we've had the conversation before, but it was like we'd say it all the time. You know, how do you expect her to believe it once you say that for the 15th time?
Right.
You know, because how do you? And I try to convince her now more through action than anything, you know, because she's heard it all before, and she's always stuck with me, and I think she sees something inside me that I haven't for in our entirety of our relationship, you know. And I try to think of that too, and I guess we really haven't had like a deep down conversation about it. I've just tried to show through action, this is what I want, and this is who I'm going to be from now on for you, me, the kids, and for everybody around me. I can't tell you how many people have come up to me in recent years that have said, hey, we're glad you don't work at the prison anymore because you were shit when you worked there. But I think it has less to do with that and more with me turning myself around. It's have people saying it's good to have the old Dane back, you know, and not just be an asshole all the time.
Well, how about you? How does it feel to have the old Dane back?
Oh, dude, weight lifted off my shoulders. I mean, I woke up this morning, was looking out the window as the sun was coming up through the trees, and I just thought, how could you ever be negative about this? You know, I woke up, I'm breathing, I'm above ground. I am in the best place I've been in recent memory. Every day I wake up, I hit the treadmill, I put on some motivation, and I've been retraining my mind to have a positive outlook on life and stop thinking about how everything sucks and more about how everything's awesome.
Plus, when you woke up this morning, you knew you were coming on the show, so I'm sure
that helped.
I'm sure that helped tremendously.
Yeah, that did help.
Yeah. So, how do you take this new form that you are now, and how do you move forward? And I guess the bigger question would be, how do you make it up to all those people?
Just by doing everything you should have done in the beginning, and I guess it's up to them as you know, whether or not to forgive you and give you another chance. You know, I think everybody has that when you go through your dark times and you burn all those bridges. You can't do anything about it. What's done is done. You know, it's just up to you to continue on the right path and be the person that you want to be and stick to it. And I mean, if they want that relationship with you, they'll come around, but you got to do you. You got to you're the reason that everything happened, and you'll be the reason why everything does happen. You know, you gotta stick to your plan, and that's what I'm trying to do.
So I had told you that I wanted you to think about the best memory, because we're going to circle back around to Hoot. And when I had asked him, what's the best story or the best memory you have of your brother. And I don't know how much he told you of it, but he said it was when you were going through training, and he came out to the pads to see you before he deployed out. And he said that he just had a good conversation with you. He wanted to hug you, but he couldn't because of where you were, and that how bad he wanted to hug you before he left. Do you remember that day?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we were I believe we were up at Edson Range at Camp Pendleton, California, and we were getting ready to go in the chow hall, and I was the third squad leader, so my job was to go up and down the line and make sure everybody was standing nut to butt with tight fists, and I remember my drill instructors were over talking to a guy in old camis, and one of the guys in my squad said, "Hey, Van Oosten, who's that?" I looked over and I saw it was Dagan, and I didn't say anything, just kept doing my thing because I didn't want to get yelled at. And then the drill instructor said, "Hey, Van Oosten, come over here." And so I got to go over and talk to him. Of course, that parade rests, and he says, "Hey, how's it going? How's everything? How you doing? Everybody treating you right?" Of course, he knows they're beating our ass, and and we got to have a good conversation, and it was short lived, but it was awesome. And then off he went, So yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday. And then of course everybody's like, "Who's that? Who's that guy in the old camis?" Because we had all digital camouflage at that point, and he had the old school woodland camis.
How much pride did you have in that day of your brother showing up there? Because he had already paid his dues a little bit by then.
Oh man, super proud. And of course I thought, yep, that's my brother. Any of you guys' brothers show up, here at boot camp. And, like I said, I've looked up to him all my life. So I was immensely proud, and I felt, um, I felt so lucky that he could come find me, and be able to talk to me.
So what's your fondest memory of him?
I had to think long and hard because we have a lot of him and I are both kind of goofy, as you know, and I had to think of a lot of stories. And I think when you say fondest, I kept trying to think of the funniest, and I remember you said fondest, and my fondest memory um uh was when I was in sixth grade, and Dagan used to take me to the weight room in his Pontiac Fiero. He was a high schooler, I was just
I
a
had no
junior high
idea he
kid.
had a Pontiac
Yeah.
Fiero.
And he had a Pontiac Fiero Silver, and him and I used to go to the weight room and lift with his buddies at the high school, jamming Metallica in the Fiero and Metallica when we got to the weight room. And I thought that I was the luckiest kid in the world that I got to go lift with my big brother and all the high schoolers, um, and the football team and the wrestling team. I just thought I was in complete awe of these guys. And that was my earliest fondest memory I could think of. I just thought I was the luckiest kid around to be able to go weight train with my big brother, who I thought was Superman.
Yeah. What do you think your fondest memory of the Marines was?
Um, Probably getting my EGA after the Crucible and whatnot. Probably getting my Eagle Globe and Anchor. That was my fondest part, or memory rather. I'd say second to that was coming home. Getting off the airplane from the first deployment and having all the families there. We were lucky enough to have a welcome home ceremony. So that was probably my second fondest.
If you could go back and tell that guy, that one that came home that first deployment, what would you tell him now? How would you change your life back then?
I would have said, stop living for just you, and live for you and everybody else. You're lucky to be here, and you should live a life that the guys that didn't get to come back would be proud of. And I didn't do a very good job of that, but that's what I would tell them.
What do you think is the biggest lesson that you've learned in your life?
um Probably that you make hard choices now and have an easy life later. That's kind of stuck with me. do the hard stuff now and you'll have an easy life later. That's probably the biggest lesson I've learned. And don't take anything for granted.
Well, to that, would you say that this is the hard stuff right now? You're trying to reshape your mind into thinking not negative thoughts. So do you think this is the hard stuff right now?
I do. I do. I think it's been hard. I think it's been hard the whole way, and I just haven't applied myself.
Once again, do you look back on that and regret that you didn't start this sooner?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There could have been a lot of hardships avoided.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So what do you think you're going to do with this newfound? How do we move forward from here?
Well, I mean, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, focusing on family and my health and my job, and just, I mean, like I said, I've got myself in such a good spot that I'm just going to keep doing exactly what I'm doing. I'm on a routine, you know, and I've got a sunny disposition, I guess is what you'd say, and a great outlook on life. And I haven't had that in a really long time, at least not for this extended amount of time. And it's really kind of got me on cloud nine, dude, to be honest. I've never felt this good for this long, and without medication, mind you. So I'm super motivated to continue to see the positive things unfold when you continue to stay positive with yourself.
Do you think that things have changed now that you're thinking positive? When you look around, does it look different to you? Like before, you said when you were always negative, like you could figure out a way, even if you won $1 million, to figure out how it sucked. Since you've changed this in your mind, do you think that things are happening different to you now?
I think so. I think so. Excuse me. You start to see, well, and it's because of your outlook. I mean, instead of walking into work thinking about how bad it sucks, I go, well, this is easy. I ate and skate, right? Do your time and get out, and then do whatever you want. Go hit the gym, and you know, more positive people start to gravitate to you. You know, they and you don't notice the little things when you're so pissed off and so focused on the negativity that you do when you're not. Like I mean, I hated my job, and this is any job I've ever had. I've never had a job where I was like, this is awesome. It's, you know, we talked on the phone about how boring being good. You know,
Yeah.
the job that I have now is super boring. There's nothing to it, but I love it. It's it's easy. I get to work with some good dudes, and I get to go home. It pays me well, and I get to go do it again the next day. And keeping that positive outlook just brings more positivity and better people into your life, you know. And it makes you see, when you see somebody who's constantly negative and whatnot, you know, like, oh, stay away from that guy. Of course, I've always, I love to help people if I can help them, you know. And I've always got kind of some fulfillment out of trying to be able to help people. But some people, you just got to be like, stay over there. I don't need it, you know. You know. So yeah, I've definitely seen things change, you know. And I mean, I don't want to say I've been on this journey for years and years and years. I mean, I guess I kind of have, but this, where I'm at now, has not been that long. And I guess I'm maybe honeymoon phasing it, but I hope it continues. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
So to kind of wrap up our conversation, if you were to see someone, because you said you like to help and all of those kind of things, if you could give advice to those people that are maybe going through that same thing that you battled through for so many years, what do you tell them?
That it can be better, but you gotta start with you. Like that, you gotta decide when you've had enough, because the only person that can change it is you. And I know that that's hard, you know, to hear sometimes, you know, because I know when I wanted it handed to me, I didn't want to have to put in the work, you know. But I started having a routine, hitting the treadmill and listening to positive, whether it be audiobooks or motivational speeches and stuff. It takes like 7 days to develop a habit. Once I would tell them, get in the habit of listening to something positive and saying positive things to yourself right away when you wake up. And it is amazing how it sets your day up for success and a good day.
Last question. Best piece of motivational advice that you've heard?
Keep moving forward. Just keep moving forward. You know, that's all you can do. I don't have a popular speech quote that I can put out there, but that's what I tell myself, you know, stop looking in and start looking out. You know, just keep moving forward one day at a time, and before you know it, it'll all start clicking.
So where can people find you? If they want to look you up a little more, see a little more of your story, can they find you on social media anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, I've just got my Facebook page, and you know, it's under my real name, Dane Van Oosten. I don't have a bunch of Instagram or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, if you look me up on Facebook, reach out. Like I said, if anybody, I'm not perfect by any means, but if anybody ever wanted some help or an ear, you know, to listen to and to talk to, then I'm there for you, man. I try to do my best to try and help everybody I can.
Man, this has been awesome. I'm so happy that Dagan put us together.
Yeah, this has been great.
Yeah, I'm heading up there, I think, in October, so we'll be able
Oh,
to.
awesome.
Yeah, I'm gonna do some stuff with Dagan up there. So I'm thinking October timeframe. We talked about it yesterday. So, but I'm so
Yeah, very
happy
cool.
that this got to happen, man. I'm so honored to have met you and just, you know, let you tell your story on here, because it's one that I think that a lot of people need to hear. I think there's a lot of people going through the same stuff that you're talking about, and they just don't know where to turn to come out of it.
Yeah, man. And thank you so much. It's been an honor to be on here and to meet you. And I can't wait to meet you in person. And like I said, hopefully, like you said, hopefully people get something out of it. And if I can help, I'm here.
Yeah. Guys, you know where you can find Dane. Let's talk about where you can find me. As always, you can find me on Instagram at the DTD_podcast. You can find me on Facebook at the DTD podcast. And you can find me on YouTube, where all these conversations, they're in video form, at Dynamic Tales Delivered, the DTD podcast. But your one-stop shop, it's going to be dtdpodcast.net. dtdpodcast.net. That's going to have everything: audio, video, pictures that I've been sent, all of those kind of things. You'll get a little deeper look into Dane and any of the other guests that we've had on here. So make sure you go there, dtdpodcast.net. As always, I got to tell you guys, you know, be a friend, tell a friend. You got to share this out there, subscribe. It's absolutely free to do. I don't charge anything for it, and it helps me so much to get these stories out there to people. So make sure you share, like, and subscribe. Let's talk about one more thing. Let's talk about this guy's brother that makes this show happen. My sponsor, Hoot, over at Nomadic Research, nomadicresearch.com. You see his hat on, you see my shirt on. I've talked about the bags, I've talked about the hoodies. Anything that you want, as I always say, to look cool, those are your guys that you're going to go to, nomadicresearch.com. They're ready for anything. They're ready for a combat zone, the urban zone, or just walking around at the library. Everyone will know you stand out wearing Nomadic Research stuff. So make sure you go check them out, nomadicresearch.com. Guys, that's going to be it for this week. Thanks so much for listening. Once again, it was such an honor to have you on here. That's Dane. I'm DJ. This has been the show. We'll catch you guys on the next one. See you later.
Thanks, brother.